Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we're going to do a little bit of something different. Today we're going to talk about dating and how it's presented to people on social media versus the reality, because I think there is a giant mistake, a fallacy that is being put forward and being taken without any critical thought by the mass people on the internet.com, and it's actually making it more difficult, specifically for men, to go out and approach women and think that dating is actually worthwhile. And a perfect example of this is this viral clip. I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's all over the internet.com, and it's been all over for a while, which is the minimum spend amount for a first date.
What's the most a man should spend on a first date?
Well, I feel like there should be like a minimum, but not a most. Because like, if you want to go, beyond, that's on you. But like a minimum, I feel like if I'm going to get ready and I'm going to use all my products to come out with you, I need like a minimum of $200. A minimum, and that's like being nice.
And what does the man get in return for that?
My presence.
Now, $200 might seem very steep to you guys out there in the audience, especially those of you who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com and pay either $6 a month or $60 for the year.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And believe me, I understand why. Also, thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Let's say I wanted to take you out. How much do you expect me to spend on a first date?
At least nice 5-star type of restaurant, and then depending on how it goes, depending how I like you, and that all kind of goes with me even saying yes for a first actual date. So that takes a toll.
Okay. So a 5-star restaurant in Miami, how much is that going to range?
300 to 800 maybe.
Now look, chances are, if you are on the internet.com, you have seen a clip like this, or the clip where women talk about the minimum amount of money that they want their potential boyfriend, partner, husband, whatever you want to call it, to make. And you usually draw insane conclusions from this because, let's be honest, these people are giving out insane answers, and that leads to people getting the perception that women have insane expectations.
All right. Hi, guys. So my question for you is, how much money do you think a guy should make per year?
Depends where they live. I mean, if I'm dating them, it'd be nice if they were at least making 100,000.
I have no clue.
Like $1 million, $2 million?
But here's the thing. Despite the fact that these clips are outrageous, despite the fact that they're entertaining, despite the fact that even I, on occasion, might want to retweet, share it with you guys out there in the audience, you need to understand that this isn't real. This isn't legitimate. This isn't representative of the overall dating market. And consistently, what we see, not just in the dating market, but across all kinds of different sectors of the actual economy, is that there is a vast difference between stated preference and revealed preference, in that people will ask for something, they'll say that they want something, but in reality, in actuality, when it comes down to it, when they have to make a choice, they actually go with something different.
Fully adult.
Someone that you would consider wanting to be with the rest of your life.
300K.
3 figures.
Okay. So why is that?
Just because, that's a stable income, I'd say.
100, 500 grand?
And a perfect example of this is the way that food products are sold in the United States of America. If you ask people what kind of coffee that they prefer, they will tell you they want a strong, bold coffee flavor. And the reason they tell you this is not because that's the actual preference, it's because they believe that that should be the preference. The same thing is true with tomato sauce. You might have heard this one before, but people will demand a robust tomato sauce. And this is because people believe that robust is good and this is what they should be looking for. But in reality, in actuality, when you buy a tomato sauce, even when it's labeled robust, one of the things that you'll discover is that it is in fact kind of watery. One of the things that you'll discover when you buy a bold coffee flavor from a Folgers or any standard company is that it's actually kind of a weaker version of coffee. In reality, even though most people will say that they prefer, even though a lot of people will even order because they want people to believe that they prefer a medium rare steak at social situations, what you find when you get people to be comfortable, what they actually choose in that scenario is medium. And by the way, even that medium might be a revealed preference versus a stated preference, because according to this, Most Americans actually prefer well done of all things. They've just been told throughout all of society that it's uncivilized, that you're low class if you order anything but medium rare. And by the way, I 100% agree with that. The majority of you Americans are wrong. You need to get that medium rare steak even if you don't like it. Let me add to that social pressure. But that's the thing. That's the phenomenon that is being presented to us out there in the public. Do you really think that these women that say that they will not date a man who makes less than $500,000 a year are going to be single their whole lives? They're not going to hook up with anybody. They're not going to become boyfriend and girlfriend, especially when they're in college and most people meet their person that they're going to marry in a similar situation like college and or work. Of course not. That doesn't make any sense at all. I know we have a crisis, an increase of single people, but in reality, part of the thing that is pushing people to that is not these unrealistic expectations of a $500,000 salary or of a ton of money being spent on the first date. It's because when you look at the college where most of these women are single and looking for men, what ends up happening is the ratios are not favorable to the women. And a lot of women, and this is true, don't want to date down. There is something to hypergamy. They don't want to date somebody lower than them. So when you have a situation where only a certain amount of men have bachelor's degrees as it compares to women, and it's getting worse in terms of the ratio as we move on, yes, that is a contributing factor. And in that regard, there needs to be a removal of some of those expectations for some of those women. But this is not the majority of cases. People date, meet, hook up all the time. And I got news for you. You don't have to be somebody who pulls in $500,000 in order to do so.
I feel like if I'm going to get ready and I'm going to use all my products to come out with you, I need like a minimum of $200. A minimum, and that's like being nice.
And what does the man get in return for that?
My presence.
Now, when we go back to our original clip, what we have to discuss is what is actually being communicated here. Because here you have a woman who says, oh, if I'm going to get ready and all that, you need to drop at least $200. Now, again, this is something being asked of her. This is her stated preference. And it also needs to be put in the context of where this is being asked and how old this woman actually is. Because if you have a woman who's in her career, she's about 25, 26, 27, obviously the expectations are going to be different when you're talking about her in comparison to a woman in her early 20s, because she makes money, because she's likely dated people that have money. She has higher expectations than women will who don't make any money at all, who haven't dated anybody with money. I mean, think about it like this. If we were talking about the high school level, and no, I'm not talking about going out and dating high schoolers, you preverts, you disgust me, you deserve to be on a list. What would be impressive to a girl in high school would be a guy who has his own car. Now, in reality, when you grow up, when you become an adult, when most of the men that you interact with are actually driving, if you're a woman and you're interested in transportation, those needs are going to be met largely by the broader population because that is something that is going to be available. At that point in time, you can state that you're more picky about the type of vehicle that you would want your partner to have. Something that's comfortable, something that's convenient, maybe something that looks attractive or whatever. All of those things factor in once you get past that base level. So if we're talking about women in college who aren't really working, or maybe they're working a minimum wage job, their threshold for what they're willing to look for, what they're willing to tolerate, is going to be, even in their stated preferences, significantly lower than what you're looking at and talking about when you have a woman midway through her career. And a perfect example of this is my own dating life. When I was dating in university, and yes, I've been in a long-term relationship, but trust me, things have not changed that much since then. I would date women that come from wealthy backgrounds. I would date women that come from not so wealthy backgrounds. But the thing is, they never really cared how much I spent on a first date because they were dating guys in and around their same age range that went to university that were in similar financial positions. Maybe occasionally they would date somebody with a little bit more money. I was dating at one point in time a girl that actually lived in Central Park West. That is some of the most expensive real estate in the country, but I wasn't taking her on crazy expensive dates. In fact, one of the things that I would go for, and I highly recommend to you guys out there in the audience, it's actually positive advice, is stop watching these stupid videos, go approach as many women as you can, take them out on a date, and instead of going for expensive, go for unique. If you take somebody out to a date that's like an experience or a restaurant that does the best thing in this category, that will create a more positive memory association with you than if you just spent a bunch of money on a restaurant that may or may not have the food that justifies that level of spending. Now, we have clips of women actually saying this if you read between the lines, and it comes from the same channel that's putting out the $200 date thing. I'll play it for you and we'll break it down so that we can talk about it.
How long have you been together?
2 years.
2 years, yes. What did you guys do for the first date?
Dinner.
I took her to Louis Bosse's in Fort Lauderdale. It's a nice place.
How much did that cost?
Like $160, I don't remember.
How would you have felt if he offered to take you to Chipotle instead?
For the first date?
So this guy did take her to a nice dinner, maybe higher up on the budget than I would recommend if you're dating with no money like I used to do. It probably wasn't as unique as where I would take people because, again, when you have no money, you go for something that's not crazy cheap, but not super expensive, but definitely high on the unique scale. And the question that is asked to this girl is that if she would have felt the same way if he had taken her to Chipotle. And she says no, because it's low effort and all that. But the thing is, she doesn't really articulate why people are against kind of like these fast food places in terms of the first date. It's not necessarily the price. It's not necessarily the cost. Because if you were to take somebody to a Mexican restaurant that was as cheap as Chipotle in terms of the price, but the food was absolutely off the charts. It was one of the best restaurants in that category, which, by the way, these places do exist at that price point. That would have been a unique experience if it had an insane decor, or maybe it even had music being played that she would have liked, or maybe there was something else about it that made it unique, different from any other place that she went in her entire life. Then that would have been perfectly fine. But the thing is, Chipotle is generic. That's what she's actually against. That's what would actually put her off. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't grab food from a fast food place every now and again. One of the dates that I took my fiance on, because I quite literally had $6, was to a 99-cent pizza place. And we did actually buy their special where you pay for the 2 slices and then you get the Coke, and it was like $3.50. And I still had $2 to go to McDonald's and get a soft serve ice cream because, yes, I was that broke back in the day, despite the fact that I was 5 years older than my fiance, who was also in college with me at the same time. She was not looking for anything crazy to be spent on her because she didn't make any money herself, and what she was in for was the experience, the confidence that I was projecting. It's not about what you spend, it's about how you communicate with this person, the experience that you could give. If I can succeed on a date with $6 in my pocket when I have no real job, no real income, probably negative net worth because I was in debt at the time, and the date consists of the cheapest pizza in New York that's not even that good, and walking on the dirty streets of New York, you can do it too.
I mean, I don't know. I probably wouldn't have I would have suggested something else, like mini golf. I don't know.
Something to make it feel more
More romantic. I go to Chipotle with my friends after the gym. It doesn't feel like a date.
And by the way, that's the key point right there. It doesn't feel like a date. What you actually need is to make something feel like a date. Now, I know other people say, oh, dinner is a cliche, whatever. What you actually got to do is go hiking or sailing or fishing or whatever you outdoorsy people like to do on a first date. But I just want to say, I can't stand you people. I don't like you. I don't enjoy you. You're not my friend. The idea that camping is a date disgusts me. You disgust me. And honestly, I hope to God that when you're hiking up the mountain, somebody yells and an avalanche crushes you and your spirit, but I want you to survive just so I can laugh in your face because you decided to do some kind of crazy physical activity that I'm not personally into. And if I personally wouldn't do it, I don't want anybody else to do it, and I thus would want to ban it if I were the king of the universe. Now, all joking aside, what I actually want you guys to take home with you is the fact that yes, the dating market has changed. Women are ever increasing their income income, they're entering the workforce, and there are more women than ever, and this appears like it's going to be true into the very near future, that make more money than their male counterparts, and we've never seen anything like this, so we don't know what the consequences of this are. However, the idea that this is all a disaster, that there's no hope for you, that you need to become a CEO before you date a girl that's 19 years old, just based on the fact that you saw these kind of videos where women appear to have all these high demands, that is not an accurate representation of reality. So what this is based on is data that shows that if a woman makes more money than the man in a marriage, they have a 70% more likely chance of getting divorced. Now, this is pretty damning. It's pretty obvious that this creates big problems in the marriage, but the thing is, that data is for people who are married in the 60s and 70s. In the 80s, that number dropped slightly, but for couples married in the 1990s, houses with female breadwinners only have a 4% higher chance of divorce. So it's actually dropped significantly, but most people who are pushing this narrative of, oh my god, there is no hope, no point in marriage, no point in dating, only quote you that 70% more likely number from the 1960s and from the 1970s. They never quote you the 1990s number, and by the way, based on this trend, it would seem like couples married in the 2000s might even be closer to the norm, even with a female breadwinner. So society and expectations are adjusting, even if women's expectations are lagging behind the economic realities of the world. And if you're a woman and you are a careerist and you make all this money, then you gotta adjust your expectations, because the pool of men in that category, the college educated as you and whatnot, are decreasing. So what's ending up happening in a lot of cases is that people end up being drawn to the same pool of men, and in theory, this leaves a lot of people out. Now, I do want to emphasize that while this is true, this is in theory. A lot of people make too many crazy broad extrapolations based on what we see through dating profile data and whatnot, and that is just not something that is true. A lot of people talk about how women screen for on dating apps men over 6 feet tall, and only X amount of percentage of men are over 6 feet tall. So it essentially means that all of the men under 6 feet tall have absolutely no chance. But the thing is, dating apps are super superficial. And the fact of the matter is, you can adjust your settings in such a way that you can make them all about your stated preference rather than your revealed preference. If you actually went up to these women, if you actually approach them, if you actually hit on them, if you're charismatic, if you're charming, if you actually make the appropriate amount of eye contact, you will be surprised how successful you can be while being under 6 feet tall. I myself am 5'10". Sometimes on my dating profile, I do lie and say 6 feet tall, but guess what? It has never once come back to bite me, even in the instance where I met somebody through online dating that was actually a 6 foot tall woman herself. Never was even mentioned that I was shorter than her, because that was not the issue at hand. I took her to a place, unique kind of dating place, and we worked it out, and it ended up happening for like a year, but, you know, things moved on. The people change and whatnot, and, you know, we don't want to talk about how it ended. My fiance, I met her, dated her for years when I had absolutely no money, and in fact, after I left college, I was in a horrible position. I've told this story on this channel before, where I thought I got a great job after college, but they weren't actually paying me, so I was actually going broke getting to that job, and it was absolutely disastrous. She did not leave me throughout that entire course of time. It was only when this channel started succeeding, when I actually started making money, did we eventually split for a set period of time before ultimately getting back together. Now, I like to joke and say that she's a gold digger because I'm successful now, but in reality, the timeline does not align with that. The issue in the relationship had nothing to do with that, and we have since corrected those issues in order to move forward. Because contrary to what you hear on the internet.com, the number one thing people are looking for, even though money does matter, isn't actually money. There's a connection element to it. There's charisma. There's whether or not you're actually kind to the person that you're with. I'm a big believer that you should not be name calling the person that you're dating, because people hold on to the things that people say in arguments, and it does not produce anything but bad results. But more importantly, importantly, you can't buy into everything that is being presented to you on social media. Unless it's presented by me, then you need to buy into 100% of it. Because if you go on social media's perception, you'll think that the minimum height requirement for a man to meet a woman is 6'3". You'll think the minimum income requirement for a man to impress a woman is $250,000. The minimum car requirement is a Porsche or a Lamborghini or a Corvette or something expensive, and none of that could be further from the truth. In my opinion, if you're a man and you're buying a car that is not something that you can afford, there is nothing that should be seen as less appealing than that, because you're more interested in showing wealth than actually presenting yourself in a in-control, disciplined kind of way. But that's just my opinion. There are women out there that definitely will go for the fancy car, and they will lead the life that you would expect somebody to lead when they date somebody for a car that was impulse bought by somebody who actually couldn't afford it. But the thing is, if you get your head right, and there are things that you can do, you can exercise, you can lose weight that improve your chances, but they're not going to make or break your chances, then you will be okay. But you have to remember and really hold on to the fact that these drunk girl interviews that you see at 3 o'clock in the morning after these women have left the bar or the club or whatever are not representative of reality. They are stated preferences, but the revealed preferences always show otherwise. But more importantly, the truth that you need to take with you, the truth that you need to carry with you, is that all you can control is your own behavior. The only thing that you can do is better yourself. And if you're expecting society to change around you, if you're expecting these interviews for these women to come out like scholars, that's not going to happen. But you can upgrade yourself. You can upgrade your life. You can present yourself better. You could think about different ideas. You can learn to better approach women. All that stuff is within your control. And I promise you, regardless of how ridiculous these videos get, regardless of whether or not women say in their after 3 a.m. club interviews that they'll only date billionaires, if you better yourself, if you project confidence out into the world, you will find and meet better women. Fact, truth, undeniable. I don't care what you say, but I actually do care what you guys say, so let me know down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the reality versus what's being shown to you in terms of dating. Till next time.